So you might have already seen the news, but SNK announced that Samurai Showdown is coming to the Xbox Series X on March 16th, and it's going to be running at 120 FPS. This is important because all other fighting games out right now are locked at 60, whether you're playing on console or whether you're playing on the PC. It's locked at 60 for a reason we'll talk about in a minute here. But I think another important thing to take away is that the game is out on every platform now except for Steam. It's on the Epic Store and it's on Stadia instead. And I think a lot of people who play this game that I've seen just want it on Steam, right? Like every other fighting game's on Steam, but SNK for some reason declined to put it on there, and now it's on Xbox Series X, which is cool, I guess. And it's at 120 FPS, which is a little odd. So let's get into it. Um, First thing I want to talk about is that the price is still $60. It's still, a full price game. Uh, I think this is what I like to call the Grand Blue syndrome, right? Grand Blue's player base has dropped significantly, and only recently have I seen it on sale at like retailers, right? I think it was on sale for like 20 bucks at GameStop is the only place I've seen it go on sale. It went on sale for maybe like 10% off on Steam once for about 46 bucks, which is still a lot. And I think that that's a big issue in the fighting game landscape right now is that the cost of the game is one thing, right? 60 bucks, you get the game. But then you get these season passes, and then you get like 50 Gokus and Dbfz, and you have to buy every single one, right? Dragon Ball has like $100 worth of DLC on Steam, if you don't buy it when it's on sale, right? If you go to look at the Ultimate Edition too, the Ultimate Edition is priced at about 100 bucks, and you only get the first 8 characters, I think. You get like a bunch of weird stuff, maybe like soundtracks and stuff like that. But I think in general, like fighting game fans have to shill out a lot more money than normal, than I've ever been used to, right? Playing like FPS games, maybe you'll get some skins, right? You don't need the skins, so you can sort of pass on that. But in Dragon Ball, you don't need the DLC characters, but I need them to lab, right? If there's something I don't know about Broly, and I can't find a video on it, or I have to go on Dust Loop and sort of just figure it out based on what I'm seeing, it sort of presents a problem to me. I think that you should be able to lab all the characters for free, right? I don't think they lose. They probably do lose a decent amount, huh? Letting you lab it for free. Now that I'm thinking about it, because I wouldn't have bought any of those characters if I didn't want to lab them to figure out why I was losing. So I see why they do it, but I really don't think it should be like that because it really deters people from even wanting to buy the game. I had a friend yesterday who messaged me and said he wanted to play Dbfz, but he didn't want to shill out like, however much money you need to get all the Gokus, right? Get all the characters. You start with a base roster, and they really milk you to get everybody else. The second thing I want to talk about is the frame data. So on PC fighting games, it's locked at 60, and on console it's locked at 60, and that's to keep the frame data consistent. This is so swapping between console and PC will feel natural. Besides, the input lag, right? Sometimes people say that input lag is less on PC than it is on PS4, which to an extent I think is true, right? It's not very noticeable, but if you play them both, if you play PC a lot and you go to the PS4, you can feel it to an extent, a very little extent though. It's still very playable. And I think that a good example of this is like I said, Street Fighter 5, and the reason that the frame data has to stay consistent is because in Street Fighter, a crouch jab is going to come out in 3 to 4 frames, right? On some characters it's 3 frames, on some characters it's 4 frames. That's 3/60ths or 4/60ths of a second. But if you crank that number up, if you double 60 FPS to 120, the attack now has to start up in 6 to 8 frames if I'm, understanding this correctly. Because that attack, if it came out in 3 frames, in 3 120ths, it would be way too fast. It would be super fast. So then they slow it down to compensate for all the extra frames. And that's if I'm understanding everything correctly. I think this is why the game coming to Xbox, and specifically Samurai Showdown, might kill the idea of crossplay between everything else. And that's because it wouldn't be consistent, right? The frame data wouldn't be consistent, and the games. I don't even know how netcode would work if one game's running at 120 and one's running at 60. I think it presents a lot of issues that I, don't even know about. And I think that's why MK11 doesn't have crossplay with the Switch, because I've seen people talking about NRS saying that the game runs at 60 FPS, but obviously in handheld mode, I'm pretty sure that the handheld screen is not capable of outputting that level of graphics at 60 FPS. And I've seen people talk about them getting frame drops, which is really bad in fighting games. I think for the most part, every fighting game I've played is very good at keeping that 60 FPS on whatever you're running it on. Whether it's a PS4, I have an old brick PS4 over there, right? Like the very first one, and I never have frame drops on it. I'm playing Street Fighter, or on PC, right? It's very good. They're very good at optimizing to the point where the game is not going to drop frames. But on the Switch, it's a new piece of hardware, relatively new piece of hardware, and it's interesting because it can switch between different displays. One being a handheld, the tiny one, and one being, your normal TV or monitor. So I think it presents a lot more challenges to the developer, in my opinion. Also, MK11 does not have crossplay uh, between PC and console either, and I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure if that's like a netcode issue or if that's like an FPS issue. I'm unaware of, but that's also a limitation of it. And then the implications of 120 FPS. This means that better monitors are going to be required at events. Usually, if you play a 120 FPS game on a 60 hertz monitor, usually you're not going to notice a difference, right? You're not going to notice anything out of the ordinary, but you might get some screen tearing and you might get a little bit of jitter. Um, and casually sitting at your setup at home, this might not be a big deal, right? It depends on what kind of games you play, but if you play fighting games, it might mess with you a little bit, but it's not going to be a deal breaker, right? However, these little minute details that sometimes wouldn't matter to us, playing at home, it matters at the highest level when you're at a tournament, right? Especially in a genre that's based on reactions and just making small calculations, right? A screen tear or something that is hardware based that you can't control will really throw you off mentally while you're trying to focus. This genre specifically, I think that it matters a lot to have the best hardware to suit the game that you're playing. And having this game at 120 FPS on the Xbox might not be a big deal because bigger tournaments usually run on like PlayStation, so it'll be on 60 still. But going into the future, whether Street Fighter 6 runs at 60 or 120, which I think it'll run at 60 because I don't think they're going to completely kill off the PS4 for that game. I think they'll put it out on the PS4 too, which means it'll probably have to be at 60. But if for some reason it does come out at 120, I think tournament organizers are going to have to upgrade their hardware a little bit. If they're not already running at 144 Hz monitors. If you play at 60 Hz at home though, I highly do suggest switching to 144. You do notice a difference significantly. I was a doubter at first when I got my first 144 Hz monitor when I played Counter-Strike like 5 or 6 years ago, and I still have it, right? It's this BenQ monitor. And I noticed a difference immediately. And also, if you do take my advice and get a 144 Hz monitor, make sure you change it in your Windows settings to 144, or it's going to default to 60, and you won't be getting your 144. Games, I'm not sure if this is a placebo effect, but games like Street Fighter V do feel better in 144 than they do in 60 Hz. Even though it's a 60 FPS game, it does feel better in 144 to me at least. And I've seen some people talk about it on Twitter, but I don't know the science and I don't know the technicalities behind it, so I can't say for sure that it actually matters in that game. I think this also implies that some games might move to PC for events because the better hardware that it requires might not be cost effective to buy like 20 PS5s when Street Fighter 6 comes out. If that's what it comes to, right? If TOs need to upgrade hardware significantly and they need to get PS5s, the PS5 is like what? It's like 500, I think. And then after tax, you're probably looking close to 6 if you can find 20 PS5s by then. But when you're getting into those upper numbers of $500-600 a pop, you can build a decent PC that will run like a Street Fighter game, in my opinion, to a decent extent, right? $500-600, mini ATX build, right? Just tiny little cases. Even Intel has those little sort of, this is like an extreme case, but those little like plug and play PCs that just plug into like an HDMI slot, and the PC literally sits on a card. and it's pretty amazing. But those are getting better and better every year. Small form factor PCs are getting better all the time, and you know, the smaller the chipsets get and everything, make it, I think, a feasible option for people to look into, um, when switching hardware in the coming years. I think it'll be more cost effective. You'll be able to run multiple games too, because I mean it'll all be through Steam, and sort of like how the PS 4 is, but you'll be able to upgrade that hardware eventually so that it becomes a little more future proof than having to rely on PlayStation to put out something new. And then this also, Brian F brought this up on Twitter, and I thought it was a great point. This opens up the market. 120 FPS gameplay opens up the market to PC-based sponsors, and that's because the hardware required to play a game at this level sometimes will exceed a console. You know, I'm interested to see how the Xbox runs at this frame rate. I haven't seen any PS5 games at 120. I'm sure it could run it, but I don't know how reliably. But I think that PC-based sponsors are where the money's at, right? That's where you see other games thriving. FPS games especially. If you ever watched a PUBG event where they're running like it's a full lobby. It's like 100 people. I think it was more like 40 to 60, I think, actually, on the stage. I think it was at like TwitchCon or something. And they had like multiple levels of people in these little cubes, like playing PUBG, and each one of them had to have a setup, right? They have to have like 40 to 60 PCs. And without any sponsors, that is insanely expensive. So I think that um, that's an important thing to think about. Also, Alienware sponsored the Street Fighter League during Corona, right? If you've been watching the streams, the game is run on PC now. It's not run on PlayStation. On the Capcom Fighter stream, at SFL, it's run on Alienware computers, which I think is a cool step forward. And Alienware is a pretty big sponsor. The Street Fighter League has some weird sponsors though. They have like um, they had Alienware, then they had Seiko watches, and then I think the Japanese one had Kadokawa, like the animation studio, which is pretty cool, but that's a different topic. Also, Intel hosted an Olympic Street Fighter V event that got canceled, right? I don't know if you guys were following that, but they were trying to do the Olympic qualifier. I say Olympics, it just happened around the time of the Olympics. It didn't really have anything to do with the Olympics, but Intel sort of used that as a selling point. And it was Rocket League and Street Fighter V with open qualifiers online. And then they had to shut it down because Corona, obviously. But it seemed like it was shaping up to be something really cool, right? Every qualifier had like 200 people, and everybody was trying to get in. And Intel put up a lot of money. I think it was like 100 grand between the two games. So I think it was 200 grand total. And it was very interesting to me that Intel, of all companies, were really interested in Street Fighter. But I guess because it's very big in Japan, as compared over here, where there's other games that sort of are a little bigger, like MK. MK11 has a huge player base, but it's all North American because the game is not available in Korea and Japan because of, you know, how grotesque it is. So I think that's why Street Fighter V was chosen. And I'm interested in general to see how this plays out, 120 FPS, and what it means for the future of fighting games. So yeah, I think that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, please let me know, and please consider subscribing.